Wow.
When in my old firm, we're trying to show that a shop is compliant, for one, we already have a problem going into court because judges do not understand this industry.
Right.
For two, there's so many regulations. So if I'm the old way of showing a shop is compliant, it could take me 13 different exhibits. Here's a picture of the wall. Here's a piece of the file. Here's this, here's this, here's this. And like my old boss had a set of forms that did not have any sort of like corporate, best strategy kind of thing in there. It was just basic compliance, but it was 7 different documents, 13 pages, all this other stuff where 9 forms in one, I can get Brian compliant with 3 pages and one signature.
Wow.
Everything's in there, which means
Wow.
in court, I can show compliance in one exhibit, which means
Wow.
the other side doesn't even bring it up. They do not challenge it. And that, in Massachusetts at least, and I'm seeing it now in California and seeing it in other states,
Mm.
that is the first place the other side goes is dirty hands. You are not compliant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to today's episode of the Body Bangin podcast. New year, new you, new us. We're talking about new topics, which I'm excited about. Sometimes I feel like we're beating the same horse because we have the same issues, and those issues don't necessarily just go away. So, although we are talking about maybe the same issues, we're talking about different ways that shops are discovering to deal with these issues. And it's really interesting to watch the industry as a whole really change and evolve as time is going on with the issues and with the difficulties that we are presented being in a shop. So today I wanted to have Sean on. We've got Sean Preston of Coverall Law. He's on with us today. We tried to get him on a few months ago, maybe more than a few months ago, and life happened. But I think now is actually a perfect time as we're coming into the new year. We've got a lot of things going on. We're trying to dial in our SOPs, be better businesses. It's the perfect time to bring Sean on. And then we also have Brian Bernard with Total Care Accident Repair. He's the owner there and he works with Sean. So he's going to be able to speak to things practically in his shop, how he's working things. And we're really talking about a lot of things, but I think in a nutshell, really it's how to, and Sean, you can correct me, but how to protect yourself as a shop owner, making sure that you're being communicative, to cover yourself legally. We don't want to leave any loose ends out there. And then also communicating properly with your customer to make sure that everybody's on the same page and insurance and all the things. So ideally, we're getting paid for the work that we're doing. Does that kind of sum it up, or am I missing some things here? I feel like I'm missing some things.
Well, no, I mean that's where you start. That's where
Right.
is like
Yeah,
people in
yeah.
glass houses shouldn't throw stones, right? So start with making sure you're protected. It's a highly regulated industry, and so you got to go. Any state that we're in, we have to start with that state. We now have a 3-person compliance team just to open up a new state and making sure that we understand the laws and regulations of that state. It's a highly regulated industry. Understand the case law of any cases that have interpreted those laws or regulations. But with our flagship program, the Forever Forms, we want you protected, paid, and responsible for your processes. So if you're the type of shop that says, yeah, no, it's all OE procedures, doesn't matter whether it says recommended, required, we're doing them, or
Hmm.
if it's all OE parts. But the biggest thing we want to do is make sure that we're giving shops options. So when someone like Brian calls me, I just love being able to give them options. Nothing's painting them in the corner. There's nothing where you have to do this. I'm sorry, you can only do that. As long as it's, safe and proper repair, then you should be good to go, and you should be getting paid every time.
Yeah, right. Well, and Sean has spoken at multiple conferences now. When I first spoke with him, he's been working with collision industries. And then I think people started kind of catching wind about what is this guy doing? How? And then hearing shops are having success with this. And really, as a former shop owner, I want to go to sleep at night knowing I'm protected and knowing there aren't things just floating out there. I'm just doing what I think is right. And that's a big issue because we don't know. So having somebody like Sean and his team that does get to know the law, that knows the law in your state specifically, so you can then draft up. He's created these forever forms. So he gives the shops he works with like templates, right? Is that what the forever forms are? They're templates to be able to communicate.
Well, it's somewhat like on our
Okay.
back end, they kind of look like a template, but then
Yep.
we customize them for the shop. So when Brian gets them, it's all his shop info, it's his logo, all his rates are in there, delivered as a fillable PDF, and then we'll work with the shop to integrate them. However, that shop is getting signatures, electronic signatures, fine. But we do all the work on the back end. The reason they're called the Forever Forms is because they're updated for life. So the Forever
Mm.
Forms combine three things. First is the Fortune 500 level development. So contracts have always been my thing in corporate law. So it's the same thing I've done with other really, big name brands when I was more on the corporate side, global 500 companies. Spend the time developing it. But one of the things I could have never done when I was with Rolls-Royce is test our contract at multiple spots. It's really only our team, right, that was using
Right.
our contract. But with us having the better part of 100 locations testing the Forever Forms, we get all that intel poured back into us because there's a
Mm.
ton of tools built into them. And then the third is, since they're updated for life, we can continually improve them. At Rolls-Royce, once a year, we would sit down with outside counsel to look at our contracts. I could roll out 2 updates a day if there was something that came up. So we always want to
Right.
be able to be agile, and that's really how we move the industry forward in the long run. But there's so many tools built in. Brian called me a couple of weeks ago because there was an insurer kind of puffing their chest out and said, "Well, we may have to take some legal options." I literally laughed on the phone as I was driving talking to Brian because I said, we took that away. The insurer doesn't even have standing to sue you. Right? Every
Yeah.
dollar coming through these shops represents unlimited liability. And because every
Mm.
dollar represents unlimited liability, you have the right, and I would say the responsibility to own the terms and conditions of every dollar. And that's the key to what we're doing.
So Brian, how have the forever forms changed what you used to do to how you're doing things now?
Well, Mickey, you kind of touched on it a moment ago. You were a former shop owner. I live and breathe everything that I do here. Um, we, Prior to meeting with Sean, we had our own repair authorization on our own forms, and you know what? They weren't good enough. I
Mm.
knew that they weren't good enough. They didn't have everything in them that I needed, and it's almost like I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
As a shop owner, we all have to wear a lot of hats, and but putting on the legal hat should not be one of them. So I was really happy to, be able to get engaged with Sean and we kind of learned a lot together, I think, in some ways.
Hmm.
But being able to put together a set of forms now that I know is, I consider it bulletproof, right? So there's three things that I need to do. I need to first make sure that I'm complying with all the laws and regulations. And Sean has done all the homework with the Forever forms and made sure that my forms are compliant.
Mm.
I'm getting the signatures on them. I'm getting a really good contract up front.
Hmm.
The second thing that I need to do is I need to protect myself. So
Mm.
I have to be protected from liability. And
Right.
so, okay, I'm doing everything I can from a contractual standpoint to do that.
Right.
And so in the future, I can then, Sean mentioned the term standing, so I'll have better standing if I need to leverage this.
Mm.
And then the third thing I need to do is give myself the best opportunity to get paid for the services that we're performing.
Yeah.
So the insurers, they like to flex their muscles and they think of new ways every day to try to pound us down. And having these forms and having a relationship like with Sean and Coverall Law, I'm able to have way better standing and I'm way more confident in my conversations with them. And I know that I have a way stronger ability to get paid for what I'm doing. So,
Really.
because the contracts are done right.
Mm. So these contracts that we're talking about, just I because you guys know what you're talking about, and we don't. We have a general idea, so I want to dial this in a little bit so we can understand it better for the listeners and myself. So the forms that you've created, the forever forms, they start with the forms that the customer's signing when they initially bring the vehicle in, right? Or
Mhm.
those are the forms we're talking about. And that's where we've got all the proper compliance and legal terms and all the things that protect you. Are there additional forms then throughout, or is it mainly that initial intake form that they're signing off on,
So
like a release?
great question. Great question. Brian was the first shop to sign on to the Forever Forms just a little over 2 years ago,
Wow.
and so the Forever Forms were an experiment. I said, you know what I had noticed in the year prior was, I guess a little over that, is that there was no good options for the collision shops, right?
Mhm.
I had ducked into a firm and I was learning about, insurance claims and getting paid and stuff. And we were doing work for towers nationwide. And we offered work for collision repair, but there was never any good answers for the collision repairs.
Mm.
Because they were not compliant with this myriad of stuff to do, our answer was always the same. It was pull out your checkbook, we need to make this go away. And to be clear, when the collision repairs were coming in, it was always reactive. It's, oh
Mm.
man, I just got served and somebody's suing me,
Yeah.
It's, oops, I got this letter in, certified mail. What's this about? And oh darn, I didn't get paid my full invoice. That's reactive. And when you got to be reactive in the law, that's expensive. So we have to get
Mm.
out ahead of that. And it's
Right.
kind of like it's like in football. You want an offensive playbook, you want a defensive playbook, but what if you could also rewrite the rules like
Mm.
during the game and really change how it gets done? That's the idea. Now, the Forever Forms for Massachusetts are 9 forms in one.
Oh, wow.
When in my old firm we're trying to show that a shop is compliant, for one, we already have a problem going into court because judges do not understand this industry.
Right.
For two, there's so many regulations. So if I'm the old way of showing a shop is compliant, it could take me 13 different exhibits. Here's a picture of the wall. Here's a piece of the file. Here's this, here's this, here's this. And like my old boss had a set of forms that did not have any sort of like corporate, best strategy kind of thing in there. It was just basic compliance, but it was 7 different documents, 13 pages, all this other stuff where 9 forms in one, I can get Brian compliant with 3 pages and one signature.
Wow.
Everything's in there, which means
Wow.
in court, I can show compliance in one exhibit, which means
Wow.
the other side doesn't even bring it up. They do not challenge it. And that, in Massachusetts at least, and I'm seeing it now in California and seeing it in other states,
Mm.
that is the first place the other side goes is dirty hands. You are not compliant. And those
Mm.
are per se violations, right? But we talked a little bit, in a prior conversation about crawl, walk, run. And
Yep.
so start with getting you right. Because you know what? After we're crawling and once we're walking, what you notice is the insurance company has certain things that are what's called a per se violation too. There's
Mm.
things that they have to do. And
Mm.
that's what Coverall Law is about. We want you protected, we want you paid, and we want you in charge of your throughput and your processes.
Wow. That's so interesting. Yeah, I can imagine having something succinct that checks all the boxes in one quick place is a lot more effective than all the things in all the places and saves everybody a lot of time and effort. And I would imagine too, once an insurance company, let's say the insurance company is filing suit, which typically I would imagine it's between them and the customer. Um, is that what you found, Brian? Is this is helping keep you out of court? I imagine typically the shop isn't the one getting sued. It's usually, the the claim holder and the insurance company because they are in contract with each other, but then you're oftentimes coming in to be a witness, that type of thing. How has that shifted things for you?
So, yeah, I guess fortunately for me, we've never been sued, never really been pulled into any lawsuit. And, that's it's good because, you don't want to position yourself there. I don't need to spend my time doing those types of things. So, what we try to do is, avoid that stuff at all costs. And this gives us that opportunity to, run things clean, know we're always on the right side,
Yeah.
and be able to, just conduct our business because that's what's most important for us.
Now,
But the
go ahead.
insurer, well, if I just kind of want to address,
Yeah.
insurers do sue shops. That is what got me in this industry,
Mm,
right? So I'm from the West Coast. My wife's from Massachusetts. I was driving across the country, moving our family over here, and I hit a deer in Montana. So the first, guys I met here in town was a small collision shop, and they were association members. And it didn't take long after that that they were getting sued by an insurer that was standing in place. So we know that insurers subrogate against one another.
right.
And they were doing the same kind of thing. They were standing in place of their insured and they were subrogating, but not against another insurer, against the shop. And so they said, I'm going
Ah,
to stand in her shoes and I'm going to sue you for like just under 5 grand. It wasn't even that much. And the
wow.
thing is attorneys will tell you nobody would sue over that small of an amount, right?
Right.
And there was no letter, there was no phone call. It was just, yep, I'm just going to sue you. And I was like,
Mm,
that's weird. And so that was my first client in this industry. I went and
mm.
found a firm that knew a thing or two about this stuff because there are no lawyers that know this area of law. They all want personal injury cases. None of them do anything in property damage and stuff about this. So that was
Mm.
my, kind of trial by fire, threw me into it. But to answer your question, it was an insurer suing a shop.
Interesting. Wow. Well, and I imagine that was a power play because they're assuming you're just going to settle, just pay the
Hmm.
bill, be done with it, wash your hands of it. And knowing the shop probably didn't have their P's and Q's, they didn't have all their forever forms. So for them, it's just a slam dunk. It's
Right.
easy. They just file the paperwork and you roll over. Interesting.
And it
Interesting.
was and it was for something that happened 2 years in the past, right? So they're looking back at a 2-year-old file and the tech that worked on it doesn't even work there anymore, you know?
Wow.
And they're just like, what the heck? And I'm like, yeah. So it's like when you talk about liability and reducing liability, these things have a tail.
Hmm.
It doesn't just go
True.
away. You need to start protecting yourself as soon as possible.
Yeah. Good point. Wow. So you have the forever forms that you created, and shops can use that. For shops that are out there thinking, man, I really got to get my stuff in order, what do you recommend? What would be a good starting point for them?
Well, to get them, so, to make sure, for one, if you're not going to hire an attorney, then I guess hopefully your association maybe has hired an attorney or somebody to really dig through. So
Mm,
my predecessor in Massachusetts had been doing it for 40 years. And so
wow.
Massachusetts was already really clear on here's all the regs and here's the laws that we need to know. And here's how we color well within the lines. So
Mm,
you got to start by coloring well within the lines. But what I'll tell you is, you know, Brian, I like what you said earlier is like, you shouldn't be the one worrying about this stuff. There are
yeah.
other opportunities out there. And so they're more than welcome to reach out to Coverall Law, talk to one of our legal pros, or get some time with me. I'd love to hear
Mm,
about what's going on in different states because what I've seen is it really is a little bit different state to state on what insurers are doing. You would be surprised at how differently insurers treat shops in Tennessee compared to California, compared to Massachusetts, and compared to Florida. It is different.
yeah. Yeah, it's wild,
Yeah.
isn't it? Well, and the laws are very different everywhere, so it makes sense that it's treated very differently. So knowing, which makes it tricky because we don't just have these are the laws, this is what it is for everywhere. For an attorney and for a shop, they really have to know their state laws. And I'm good friends with a lot of different people in associations and some that are very much like-minded, as you, Brian. And they have gotten to know the laws of their state and spent a lot of time educating themselves to know those types of things. And I just think, oh my gosh, when I was running my shop, my brain was already about to explode. And so then to try to dig
Yeah.
into this law book, I'm like, wow. And I live in the state of California, which is like one of the most litigious states in America. And it's
Mhm.
like, holy cow. So I'm with you. Most people don't have the bandwidth for that type of thing. That's why you get a good attorney. But like you even said, and part of the issue that I ran into when I did have my shop was attorneys don't know our industry because it's just not it's interesting. It's almost like we're like the redheaded stepchild that everybody forgets about. That's like, so if you try to find a specialist, good luck. It's really, really
Yeah,
tough.
that's really a good point. You know, Sean's probably done more in the last 3 months than most lawyers have done in the last 3 decades in our industry.
Yeah.
And having that depth of knowledge of somebody who is not only in it every single day, but you know, the ability to learn from every situation that he hears from all of his clients, you know, these are things that then come back to help reinforce the forms that he's put
Mm.
together.
Yeah.
So every step of the way, he's learning something from it.
Mm.
And, you know, these forms, they're forever forms, but it's a living document.
Right.
So it's being changed on a regular basis based
Hmm.
on the things that are being learned. You're not going to find somebody with that kind of depth of knowledge anywhere.
Right. Yeah. So real
Yeah,
quick, I
it's
know,
taken.
yeah.
Mhm.
So our podcast used to go like 45 minutes an hour, and now everybody's like, I want the shortened version, but I feel like I have so many questions. So I've got to keep myself, I'm, the little chatty Cathy I am. I'll finish with this question. So the thing that I know shops are concerned about is A, they want to be covered so they can sleep at night because that was my biggest thing.
Mhm.
But then also it's getting paid. They want to get paid for what they do. And you mentioned that in the beginning. And I don't want to skip over that because I feel like that is the biggest thing that I hear about. I do marketing for shops. I talk with shops every day
Mhm.
that are trying to grow their businesses. And the biggest complaint that I hear on a daily basis is, how it is with these insurance companies, you can't get paid for the work that you do. So, Sean, with the forms that you
Hmm.
have and how you're doing things, either Sean or Brian, you can talk on how what you're doing with whatever it is that you guys are doing. How is that helping you get paid on the repair?
I was, happy to let you, answer, Brian. The only thing, that I really want to make clear, I guess two things is the shop must be paid. The customer must be reimbursed if we're talking about insurance, right?
Mm-hmm.
The shop's got to get paid, and that's it.
Yeah.
Um, then, but Brian had a really good, case early on where there was an insurer that was kind of jerking him back and forth, fix it, no, it's a total, fix it, no, it's a total. And at the end, he's like, you're gonna end up paying my storage. And I said, no, we're not. He fixed it. And the biggest thing that I want to give these shops and that the Forever Forms give you is options, right?
Okay.
You can get it straight from the customer, but you don't have to. You can hold the vehicle like Brian did, but you don't have to. Those are the two quickest ones. Those are
Mm-hmm.
great. And there are, with both of those, there are some legal significances to do that. But we have shops that are holding them because one of the things we recognized, an issue we had to tend to right away, was that the short pays were never enough to warrant going and bringing suit. You're not going to sue
Mm.
somebody over $1,200. You're not going to sue
Right.
somebody over 2,000, right?
Right.
But what we have and what we're now testing is the ability to bundle these together. We hear so much in so many of these commercials how much insurers love bundling. And we said, well, they're not going to mind if we bundle these together too, So we've got, now this is crawl, walk, run, this is getting some more advanced stuff. But when Coverall Law enters a state and we get further down the road, we have strategic litigation in there. So we have cases that are now being won that say, yep, we've got this assignment, we're able to stand in these shoes, that's there. And then we've got a case right behind it, which I believe is actually Brian's, that says, cool, all the same things with that one we just won, except we're going to bundle these all together. And if we're ever wrong, we say, Judge, just please let us know why we're wrong, because then
Right.
we'll go and update the forms.
Right. Right.
So options. Options, and the shop must be paid. The rate's the rate.
Right.
Right. So that's true. I mean, I had that situation where I got paid on something where again, the insurer was sticking to their guns. There's no way you're getting paid. They had delayed a repair for literally months while the car was in my shop, and I cannot accept them adding burden to us.
Mm-hmm.
They need to pay for any burden. So that was a win for us. I've had multiple situations where insurers, again, trying to flex their muscle. I'm not paying for that. It's a recommended, not a required type of operation. It's like, no, we recommended, just so you know, when somebody recommends something, that becomes a new barrier. Okay. That is now the standard for performance.
Right.
If you fall below a recommendation, you're not following a recommendation from a manufacturer, you've just opened up a whole lot of liability for yourself.
Right.
So when we recognize that that now becomes the minimum standard of performance, we can now make that argument to a customer. Even if a customer has to pay me, we can now provide them with great documentation and they're getting reimbursed back. So even if they don't pay me directly, we're getting the full amount of reimbursement eventually, and that's great. That's what really matters, is that the customer is being indemnified, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable during that process.
Right.
But we're in a really fortunate position. We own the relationship with the customer.
Great.
The customer does not have a relationship with an insurance company.
Mm.
And they know that we're performing the work. They know that they can come and see us if they have a problem. We have a really deep relationship. We bend over backwards for them. Uh, they're gonna go with us 100% of the time. They know that we're advocating for them
Mm.
and for the safety of their family and their
Right.
motor vehicle. So it's pretty
Mhm.
easy once you have that figured out. But again, you have to be committed to repairing cars properly. I think everybody should make sure that they're doing that, because otherwise, legally, you don't have great standing if you're
Right.
not doing all the right things the right way.
Yeah.
So you need to be committed to doing a great job.
Now, when you
For
say
all the
that,
shops,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was just saying, like, I don't want you to be the cheapest. I want you to be the best, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that there is no legal authority for like this, like prevailing rate or something like that. And that was something that,
Mm.
as we were digging in further and further into the law, and I'm going through this, and then we represent a couple of associations, including the Mass Auto Body Association. I called Lucky Papa George and I said, Lucky, I have been up to my hips in this law for months now, and going through, and I have not found a single thing that talks about a prevailing rate.
Mm.
What is the legal authority for a prevailing rate? He says there is none. I was like, thank you. But because of keeping the shops so segregated, making you feel like you're
Yes.
on an island, saying, oh, you're
Yes.
the only one, that is how over decades you're able to get such a gap between collision and mechanical. Where the
Mm.
mechanical rates are, that's really where the collision rates ought to be, right?
Yep.
Because that's not the take home pay for the guy touching your car. That's the business you're in. You're supposed to be in the business of putting body and refinish hours into a job, and
Right.
that's the right rate.
Right. Yeah. Very good point. Very interesting. Um, Brian, I just want to circle back to something you had said where you give your customer documentation so to help them get repayment. So is that part of the forms then that you've worked with Sean
That's,
or
yeah, not part of the forms,
okay.
but it's one of the practices that we will do. So,
Okay.
if a customer has some sort of out of pocket and they're going to seek reimbursement to the insurer, we'll provide them with the OEM repair procedures, any documentation, whether it's invoice for a part, or maybe it's a sublet procedure that's being performed, measuring a steering column. So we'll make sure that all that information is in the hands of the insured, so
Yes.
that they can easily make that request for reimbursement.
Hmm.
Do you
Okay.
do evidence also? Any photos
We
for
do.
them
Yeah.
too? Great.
Yes, we do.
Because so there's three things you need in order for your customer to get fully reimbursed, right? The shop needs to be paid. The customer needs to be reimbursed.
Right.
Now, for the customer to be fully reimbursed, what that shop should be giving them is what's called a super bill. Okay. And this is a term taken from another area within insurance law.
Yeah.
But a super bill has three things to it. And to be clear, I do not want shops to adopt medical terminology of like, oh, it's a copay, kind of like medical. No, no, they really should just be their deductible. The fact
Mhm.
that they just picked an insurer that's playing some silly games, like, I'm sorry, but the shop must be paid. your customer must be fully reimbursed. Now, you give them a super bill. That is, number one, a paid in full invoice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's Brian's invoice for Total Care, and it shows that the customer paid in full, right? Number two, everything that Brian said, that's the latest research, all the OE procedures. The
Mm-hmm.
latest research says this is how we do it. Number three is evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Evidence that it was required and evidence that it was done. And that's the
Mm.
same thing on the medical side. If I was to use an out-of-network medical provider, let's say I
Right.
want to go get a nose job, but I don't want to use the in-network person who's only been doing this a couple of weeks. I care a lot about my nose, so I'd go to the best. I'm going to get a super bill, right? I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
get my paid in full rhinoplasty. I'm going to get the latest research on how they do a rhinoplasty. And I'm going to get evidence, picture my big old honker before, and every step of the way, pictures throughout, that it was done, right?
Yeah,
Everything
right.
they wanted to charge for, that's a super bill.
Mm. Good point. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I feel like I could have you guys back on for a second episode so we can go down some of these paths a little bit more and push on this. And we probably will after this comes out because people are going to message me and be like, I want to know more. I need to know more specifics. But I'm going to put Sean's information in the description so you can reach out to him. So if you do have questions, potentially like next steps, any issues you're having, whatever, they can contact Sean. Um, and then Brian, did you have something more that you wanted to share there?
Um, well, I think the most important thing to share is make sure that this part of your house is in order,
Mm,
because it's really important to take care of that. And again, it allows you, I think you even alluded to it, helps you put your head on your pillow at night,
yeah.
knowing that these bases are covered. The things that you don't even know, what you don't know, you need
Yes.
to have somebody in your corner handling that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You don't know what you don't know. And that those are the things that come and bite you because you didn't know.
Yeah.
And then once you do know, then like you said, Sean, now you're being reactive. And that's the last place you want to have to be.
100%. No, our goal is to take as much off your plate as possible. We want you to focus on what you do. We'll focus on what you don't, you know? The forever forms are so easy to use, but we will train your team. Any questions they have for the members, we got the Coverall Law platform. Members get 24/7 access to us, and they get to see what questions other shops have. So it's always it's take care of those that take care of you, and we are blessed with a great community of quality shops that are regularly bringing us ideas where we can add more value,
Yeah.
and we do regularly want to add more value.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's important for shops to know, we'll leave it at this, that you're not alone. And when I had my shop, I felt very alone in a lot of things, just trying to figure it out. And there wasn't a lot of camaraderie. The industry's gotten a lot better about that in the last, almost 20 years since I had my shop. Geez. Um, but you're not alone in this, and you have resources and you have people that will have your back and will help you. So I would say reach out to people like Sean, join the Collision Cocktail Hour, go to collisioncocktailhour.com. It's a monthly meeting we do. We talk about hot topics in the industry. It's free. Plug into stuff like that. Plug into your association. Get to know other people because you're not fighting this battle alone. And you only have so much knowledge based off of your perception and your experiences. And when you pack that up with all these other people that are going through the same things, man, it's comforting, A, and B, it's so valuable and so helpful. So I know Sean's comes to our collision cocktail hour, Brian, any shop out there is welcome. We welcome you to join. We talk about, like I said, monthly hot topics. There are a lot of great podcasts out there, but use the resources that are available to you. Back when I had my shop, there wasn't stuff like this. I mean, we had our association, but it was nothing like it is now. Take advantage of it, right? That, that's
Yes,
that's what I'm saying.
absolutely.
Okay, so Sean's information is in the description. Anything, Sean, you wanted to last note before we head on out for the day?
I was just going to thank you, Mickey. I really appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do for this industry. And
Oh,
I couldn't count how many of your episodes I've watched, but, in getting in this, it's, for me and my team, we just want to take in as much as possible so that we can deliver, the highest value that we can.
right.
And I don't think we'd be exactly where we are if it weren't for folks like you and you specifically. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. You guys are so sweet. Well, thank you all for
Thank you.
listening. Another great episode of the Body Bangin podcast. Do something about this. We are shop owners. We have a huge liability on our shoulders, and there are resources out there. So take advantage of them. Do not be reactive. Be proactive. And we'll leave you with that. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will see you next time. Make sure you're following us if you're not already. Apple Podcasts, you can follow YouTube, like, and subscribe so you get notified of the latest video when it drops. We're on all the audio platforms, but yeah, yay. Sean's doing the clapping emoji. I appreciate that. All right, folks, we will see you next time. Bye.